Welcome to The Explainer. So right now, we are smack in the middle of a massive, kind of wild cultural panic happening at the exact intersection of artificial intelligence and human creativity. As generative AI programs churn out these absolutely breathtaking images, complex poems, and even code in mere seconds, literally everyone, from artists to lawyers, is desperately trying to figure out where the machine ends and the human author actually begins.
And it all really boils down to this one stark, fundamental question. If a machine renders the image, who is the true artist? I mean, this is the core philosophical conflict of our time. It challenges us to completely rethink our basic definition of what it even means to be a creator. If you aren't the one holding the paintbrush, mixing the oils, or snapping the shutter, can you still claim that final masterpiece as your own?
To start answering that, we really have to look at how we already treat human artists. Because we already totally accept that famous artists use highly skilled assistants. Think of Jeff Koons. His massive, complex sculptures are physically engineered and built by dozens of studio assistants. Yet we unequivocally accept that Koons is the artist, right? His instructions, his precise prompts are what define the work. So the real question the legal and art worlds are wrestling with right now is, why on earth are algorithms judged by a completely different standard than a human assistant?
Let's dive right into Section 1, the myth of physical execution.
Okay, we need to completely shatter a massive misconception right out of the gate. This idea that physical participation is somehow the defining factor of art. The truth is, art hasn't worked that way for well over a century. Back in 1917, Marcel Duchamp shocked the world by taking a standard, mass-produced porcelain urinal, signing it Armut, and just placing it in a gallery. He didn't sculpt it, he simply selected it. Jump to the 1980s, and Sherry Levine literally re-photographed Walker Evans' famous Depression-era photos and claimed them as her own conceptual art. More recently, Maurizio Catalan famously duct-taped a banana to a wall, called it art, and sold the thing for over $100,000. He didn't grow the banana, did he? No, he just provided the conceptual intent. And now, in the 2020s, we have generative AI tools. Throughout history, artists have consistently and intentionally moved away from the physical labor of making, shifting the focus entirely to the idea itself.
So we're really contrasting a classical expectation with a modern reality here. On one side, sure, you have the sweat of the brow, the actual physical execution, the mixing of colors, the chiseling of marble. But on the other side, we have conceptual intent, the sweat of the mind. Our sources argue incredibly persuasively that the true artistic spark doesn't actually live in the muscles of the arm, it lives entirely in the intent of the mind. Writing a precise, complex prompt, that's really just the newest iteration of this conceptual labor. So, if art isn't defined by the physical stroke of a brush, how exactly is it defined?
Which brings us to Section 2, intent and correct regard.
Philosopher Gerald Levinson gives us this absolutely crucial definition called correct regard. Basically, for something to be art, a human must intend for it to be viewed in the exact same historical, art-conscious way that we view previous artworks. It's all about consciously placing an object into the ongoing dialogue of art history. And here's the kicker, a machine cannot do this. An algorithm doesn't know what a museum is. It takes human intent to connect a newly generated image to the vast, rich history of human expression. And to brilliantly illustrate this concept, let's look at a famous thought experiment from philosopher Arthur Danto. Actually, picture a necktie in your head, just totally covered in messy oil paint. If Paul Cézanne used that tie just to wipe his brushes at the end of a long day, well, it's garbage. It's just a dirty piece of cloth. But if decades later Pablo Picasso takes that exact same paint-covered tie, mounts it on a gallery wall, and declares it a profound statement on modern life, suddenly there is absolutely no question it is a priceless work of art. The physical object is literally identical. The only difference is the human context and the human intent that artifies the object. Without that human pilot, an AI generating an image is just rendering pixels. It cannot consciously challenge the boundaries of art on its own.
Moving on to Section 3, AI as the mindless scriptor.
To really grasp this, we need a massive paradigm shift. We have to stop looking at AI as this conscious, reasoning creator and see it for what it truly is, mechanically. Decades ago, cultural theorist Roland Barthes coined this term, the scriptor. A scriptor isn't an author, it's just a mechanical vessel. Our sources describe modern AI as a purely mechanical translator. It just blindly processes, mimics, and recombines massive databases of our cultural history based purely on statistical probabilities. I mean, it can execute a rendering with blazing speed, sure, but it does it without comprehending a single word or truly understanding a single pixel. It is a brilliant mimic, but a completely mindless one.
Let's see how this builds into human philosophy, specifically looking at the work of Hannah Arendt. She argued that true creation requires praxis, which is this active, engaged doing that is completely tied to our biological lived experience. Think about it. A machine doesn't feel joy. It doesn't experience grief or heartbreak or anxiety. It faces zero biological friction. Real art requires accumulating emotional experiences and literally fighting your way through the messy maze of human life. The machine fundamentally lacks that messy biological spark. So we're left staring at this massive divide. On one side, we have what the source researchers call OS alpha. That's the human mind. It's warm, highly associative, beautifully fluid, and, deeply messy. This is exactly where meaning lives. But on the other side, we have the machine's arithmetic logic unit, the physical silicon. It's cold, deterministic, rigidly discrete. It only understands voltage, ones and zeros. There's this vast gaping hole between human meaning and mechanical execution. So how do we bridge that gap? How does the warm, messy human mind actually command the cold, rigid silicon?
That leads us right into Section 4, the semiotic bridge and the art of the prompt.
The absolutely crucial thing to understand here is that a prompt is not just typing, "make a picture of a cat." No way. As the legal and technical sources outline, advanced prompting, like chain of thought prompting, is a meticulous artistic blueprint. You are defining core abstract concepts, you're outlining emotional and thematic progressions, and you're detailing specific artistic rationales. It is a highly specific operational story. You are essentially stepping into the role of the master artist, providing rigorous, detailed instructions to that mechanical studio assistant we talked about earlier.
Because text is the universal deterministic interface. It's the semiotic bridge. Pure text is quite literally the only way we can safely compile our fluid, associative imagination into strict physical hardware action. The prompt is the divine script. It forces the mindless scriptor to execute the author's highly specific vision. At the end of the day, you, the human, are the sole source of the intent.
And finally, Section 5, Era of the Orchestrator.
We are evolving, right now, from being sole originators, the ones mixing the paint ourselves, into sovereign curators. And this shift requires a totally new kind of labor called pro-distortion. See, because the AI is just statistically guessing, it's constantly introducing unpredictable algorithmic distortion. It strays from your vision. Pro-distortion is the mental sweat you pour into refining that prompt, actively fighting the machine, pruning its wild outputs, and forcefully bending the scriptor back toward your exact mandate. You can't just be a passive monitor here. Manual authorship, your active human judgment, is literally the only thing that overrides the automated miasma of the machine. The AI is simply a very powerful mechanical brush, but you are absolutely the undeniable painter.
So, as we navigate this wild new algorithmic era together, and as these systems become faster and even more pervasive, you really have to ask yourself, will you just passively accept the machine's generalized average output? Or will you step up, wield the divine script, and act as the sovereign pilot of your own creativity? Because the choice of exactly how much intent you bring to the canvas is now entirely up to you. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring the architecture of the world around you.